Hi, I'm Faraz Khan from MyTrack Recruitment, and welcome to Season 3 of the Low Code podcast. Low code is the future of software development, but what is low code without its developers? So this season, I will be speaking to all levels of developers across the globe who have taken the career choice of working with low code platforms. With this podcast, our aim is to help grow the low code developer community by inspiring others to follow the same path as our guests. There is a severe shortage of resources in this area, and we are looking to help bridge that gap by raising interest and awareness amongst developers to look at this exciting technology. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Code podcast. Today my guest is OutSystems Developer Matthew Harvey. Hi Matt, how are you?
Hello, very well, yourself?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for taking part in our podcast.
No, my pleasure. Took a while to get the dates together.
I know we've been talking about it for a while, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think I first mentioned it to you probably last year.
Yeah, I think it was November.
Yeah.
10 months.
No, we got there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So no, thank you for taking the time. Obviously you're UK based OutSystems developer. It'd be good to kind of just start off with you giving us a bit of an introduction.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So Matthew Harvey, I'm 23, nearly 24. Been working with OutSystems for approaching 5 years in April. So been in it for quite a while now. I started with OutSystems start of 2018 in the second year of my apprenticeship. So I did an apprenticeship at a car manufacturer, doing IT, started in some traditional development stuff, but didn't actually get to do an extensive period of traditional development before we started to introduce OutSystems into our stack, and I think that's actually benefited me. So yeah, I did high code and traditional development as part of my degree. So degree apprenticeship in software, did Java, which was pleasant for as always. So to go to OutSystems in my career, or professionally at work, and then have to go to university on a Friday and do Java was that was wonderful. So really looked forward to that. Just carried on through that. I actually ended up doing my endpoint assessment, my synoptic project in OutSystems, which was It was quite a nice experience actually, because I was able to demonstrate to the people who were marking me or whatever that low code is actually a really good option. And one of my tutor, who was in the who was in all of my endpoint assessment and synoptics and everything, he actually asked quite an interesting question. He said, "Do you think low code should be taught in university as a module?" Because we had like elective modules that we could do. I chose UX for one of them, but he asked the question, do you think low code OutSystems would be a good option? I said, I think it would be great, because it would show earlier on in people's careers, because obviously I did it in a slightly different way, doing a degree apprenticeship. But there's people who my degree apprenticeship was a translation of a normal course that they provided for full-time students. So I think if they'd have been able, if they were to onboard people into that and show them the options that are available, more so than just the new JavaScript frameworks, Java, .NET, MVC, the traditional Python, that was all the rage when I was first starting at uni. If they could show that, I think it would open some doors and some opportunities, particularly in the UK, for more OutSystems more low code, more OutSystems developers to come about, because I appreciate it's a niche market, but it is growing, and I don't see it going anywhere.
And you said obviously you're nearly 24. To have like nearly 5 years experience in OutSystems at that age is very rare, I find, unless you were in Portugal, where it's obviously very being kind of their tech, it's kind of more common to have people like that. I think in the UK you'd be probably one of the youngest people who have that much experience around.
I think nowadays, especially, people don't really, I don't personally have my age on my CV, so it's nice to be able to sort of go in and not worry about that my age or whatever may come across as I don't have the relevant experience to go into a position that I'd be looking for. So that's really worked for my advantage. And I thank the company that I started with and everything for it was a strategic move that they made within their IT and their portfolio, but it ended up benefiting me because I found myself really enjoying the development side of it.
Sure.
I did enjoy hide code development, but I went in originally as a mobile app developer. That was the intention for my apprenticeship. To have an end role as a mobile application developer. But that would have been in the normal, really traditional Android Studio and stuff like that, which is they work really well and they're very powerful, and you have a lot of capability within that, and it is the standard. However, I think OutSystems, it sort of fell into the fact that I became a mobile app developer as part of that, just from doing OutSystems, because it lends itself so well to it.
Yeah, sure. And do you think by doing a degree apprenticeship rather than just going to university full time doing a degree, do you think that kind of helped your career? Because when you graduated, you had quite a few number of years of experience under your belt already.
I think it's probably the thing that has benefited me the most. As much, I didn't especially. I would say I didn't enjoy or not enjoy the uni experience, but I didn't get the traditional university experience that most people get. Sure. I was in on day release 1 day a week. I was in on a Monday or in on a Friday throughout the time that I was there, and it wasn't a couple of hours lectures here and there, go back to halls, eat ramen, play Xbox, and then come back again for an afternoon lecture. It was I would drive up, I'd drive 40-50 miles to university, do 8 hours of lectures, drive 40-50 miles back, and then go to work the next day. So I tried to do a sort of a little bit of a calculation of it. So generally a normal 3-year, mine was a translation of a 3-year degree into a 4-year degree. And the 3-year degree would have been 4 modules a year. My 3-year degree was 3 modules a year. So I was essentially doing 2/3 of a normal degree every year, just for an extra year. And it was really tough. There's no denying the level of difficulty that it had, but doing it through an apprenticeship, I was after my first year, I was coming into 2nd, 3rd and 4th year, and they were teaching me stuff that I'd done the year before at work. So my level 6 software module was in API development, REST and SOAP. I'd already been doing that, both through middlewares like MuleSoft as well as with OutSystems in REST API development, consuming and exposing. I was doing that for easily a year before I even got into actually developing it myself. So I wouldn't say I breezed through it. It was a lot of real grunt work. The workload on top of a normal full-time job as well was the hardest part, balancing that. And there was a couple of times where that didn't work out for me. But it was, I think it was probably the biggest benefit for me. When I was finishing my A levels, and I went to look around some universities to look at computing courses and things like that. And I didn't get the feeling inside me that this is a place I wanted to be, or this is a thing I wanted to do. And when I originally applied for my apprenticeship, it wasn't a degree apprenticeship, it was a higher. So it would have been level 4 foundation and then topped up afterwards. I just managed to fool myself into the opportunity to do the degree apprenticeship at Manchester Met. And it was fab. And as you say, I may have been a year behind my counterparts who I finished my A levels with, because I did 4 years instead of 3. But I have 4 years of business acumen on top of it. So I'm essentially 3 years ahead. I try not to look at it like that, because age doesn't matter by the time you've got it. But it meant that I didn't have to go for graduate roles. So when I finished my degree or finished my apprenticeship and stuff, I could move, and I did make a move, didn't I? I moved from where I was to do my apprenticeship into where I am now, and I didn't have to look for trainee positions, graduate positions, because that's all those graduate roles are for. They're that transitional phase between university studying, learning the technology, and developing the business acumen. I didn't need to do that. Which obviously it's put me in a forward trajectory, which is it's great. I try not to take it for granted too much,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you
of
know
course.
I am in a beneficial position, but
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
it
sure.
took some sacrifices.
Yeah,
So.
of course. Yeah, of course. And I think what I was going to ask was, you said your previous employer, where you did the apprenticeship, they bought OutSystems in, was it a year in?
Yeah, so I started September 2017.
Mhm.
We did our first OutSystems project in April 2018 with a third party. We worked with Truewind on that one.
Mhm.
Um, and so I was there more so as a developer
Mhm.
advisory, um,
Yeah.
just to sort of get an understanding of what OutSystems was intended to do.
Mm.
So that was from April. And I was working on a separate project until December 2018, and then I started picking up OutSystems as a developer. So I was
Mhm.
aware of OutSystems from 6 months of me being at
Yeah.
where I was, but it wasn't a case of me doing any of that
Mm.
development. I was more there to understand what the third party were doing and how they were
Yeah.
introducing the platform, which I think worked in my favor, because I was able to see from the get-go what the expected working practices are for OutSystems, because it
Mm.
is very, very different from traditional development. And I
Yeah.
never saw that in the real world until I started at the place I'm at now,
Yeah.
because we've got a bunch of normal
Yeah.
traditional
Yeah.
developers who have now had to translate into not just low code from a development perspective, but also from a working practice, how the platform works, how it changes and lends itself to specific ways of working. And it's it benefited me from looking at it
Mm.
from an advisory perspective that early
Yeah,
on. But it
sure.
was, I was very early on in my career before I
Yeah.
moved into it, which was good.
Yeah. And had you, was that the first time you'd heard of it, when you kind of, it was mentioned, or have you
Yeah.
heard of it before?
No, I'd never. So we'd done a little bit of work with like web scraping and things like that
Mm.
at my first place, but that was only a couple of months, and it never really came to any fruition,
Mm.
because web scraping is far too volatile because of changes that happen with
Yeah.
web standards and things like that. So we dropped that project, and because I went into my degree, they were looking at Java, JavaScript, HTML,
Mm.
Android Studio, standard industry practices, because they've got to
Mm.
work for the
Yeah, of course.
maximum.
Yeah.
They've got to cater for the maximum amount of
Yeah.
jobs at the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Of
Um,
course.
so it wasn't until we fell into that. We were looking at, I think I think we went to tender for 3 providers for
Mm.
a low code platform. So it
Yeah.
was OutSystems, Mendix, and Appian, I think.
Appian. Yeah.
And
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. So OutSystems, so Mendix, we had a bit of a competition between Mendix and OutSystems, because
Yeah.
Mendix was being used by another company within our group.
Okay.
But for us, OutSystems served more of a purpose, because
Mm.
it's not just a low code, it's a platform as a service, and it was
Mm.
fully catered for. We had all the updates and everything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think for us, and even now, so it's a little bit different where I am now, but especially at my first job, because there was only myself as a full-time OutSystems developer, and then 2 other developers 50% of, or less than 50% of the time.
Yeah.
We didn't gain the benefit of time saving from OutSystems in the
Mm.
traditional sense. So normally,
Yeah.
you got a software house of 20 developers who are doing traditional. The selling factor for OutSystems is that you can cut your code time down by
Yeah.
50% or whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
We didn't use it for that. We used it to deliver in the same amount of time as we normally would, but with half the resource. So we were still
Yeah. Sure.
developing twice as
Yeah.
quick as we would have been traditionally, but because we had such limited resource,
Yeah.
we
Of
just
course.
used it we're going to deliver to the targets that we originally specified with
Yeah.
half as many people,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
which is very different to what
Yeah.
I'm doing
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Working with with a much larger group of developers, and
Yeah.
there's a lot more structure. I've
Mm.
got a proper tech lead now. I didn't
Yeah.
have that before.
Mm.
But yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's great for all that.
And obviously, before OutSystems came in, you're obviously working on other tech.
Yeah,
Um,
so I did about 10 months with SharePoint, which I supported
okay.
throughout my whole time at OutSystems. So I did a lot of stuff with the JavaScript
Mm.
model within SharePoint. So a
Mm.
lot of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, front-end development, configuring of SharePoint, which I don't know if anybody's used SharePoint before, but SharePoint development is niche in itself.
Yeah,
so
okay.
yeah, I did a bit of that, a little bit of .NET, WCF services, started dabbling very, very minorly with MVC, which is obviously what OutSystems is.
Yeah.
OutSystems 11 is built on top of anyway, with a React framework over the
Yeah.
top. So that helped a little bit, but I didn't really get much into that. I pretty much dipped my toenail into the water of traditional development before I fell down the roller coaster that was low code. So I see that as a bit of a benefit, really.
So you weren't kind of invested in kind of the traditional side before it came along, where, you know, sometimes I think some people, if they start with traditional, if low code comes, they think, well, this is new, I haven't heard of it, I've kind of been doing this for a while. You know,
I know what's best. Sort of
yeah, exactly. So okay, I guess the timing for you was really good then.
Yeah, I think it worked absolutely to my benefit. You know, I was a little bit worried when I started, when I decided to make the move from the place I started at into a new position somewhere else, which obviously you helped me with.
Yeah.
I was worried about the availability of low code positions, especially with the circumstances that I was looking for with remote and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's not as scary as it seemed. And I think the whole point of OutSystems is putting yourself in, you know, I don't need to worry. It's full abstraction from what's underneath. I don't need to know what version of this database driver I have. I don't need to know any of that sort of thing, which is very, very, very required in traditional development, as it should be, because it's, I don't think that lends itself to I don't think OutSystems is impacted by that abstracted mindset, because it allows you to purely focus on requirements driven development. You're not having to worry about, such minute little technical details. You can be very technical, and it's very, very rare that I've had situations in nearly 4.5 years of development in OutSystems where I've had to break out into a higher form of code. JavaScript a little bit with the reactive framework in its early days, and especially if you're doing some really, really complex front end stuff, JavaScript can help, but it's probably maybe 1 in 150 things I do, maybe even 1 in 200 things I develop, I would require to break out into something higher code. And even then it's just JavaScript. So it's not, and it's only for like little date picker, or date management, or just a more effective way of iterating over a list and just things like that. It's not. And I've sort of, because I didn't get so used to that traditional development methodology, I've been able to force myself into what OutSystems mindset should be, about using architecture dashboards, using discovery to make sure that your applications are architected in a sustainable manner. Like monoliths in OutSystems is a real problem, especially from what I can tell from what traditional developers have, because they like all their code in one place, because that's what they're used to. They're used to opening Visual Studio, selecting a project, and having everything listed there, accessible when it needs to. OutSystems doesn't lend itself to that particularly well. It likes abstraction, separation, clear concept-driven architecture. And particularly since I've been where I am now, since February, I've been able to develop that skill further. And looking at I'm such in the mindset, I check architecture dashboard in the morning. If I've got any new violations that come up, they get fixed, which helps with the technical debt management, which can become a problem in OutSystems if it's not taken care of from the point in which you onboard in a platform.
And obviously you've probably got other mates who are in traditional development. Have they, I'm assuming a lot of them may have not heard of OutSystems when they saw that's what you're kind of doing. Was that a discussion that came up?
I mean, it was particularly at uni. I mean, I don't really have many sort of personal friends who do development, but a lot of the people that I spoke to at university that I worked with on my course, a lot of them, they were doing Java. That's why they were doing Java, they were doing .NET, they were doing, React. And I had a few people that moved from where I was before into other positions, going back into traditional web development. And some of them prefer it, some of them don't. I think
Mm,
a lot of it is, I don't think a lot of it is technical,
mm,
because OutSystems has initially a really easy learning curve. So it's really easy to pick it up and get things going. Then when the
mm.
complexity is introduced, the learning curve becomes really steep. But
Yeah.
once you get past that, you can look at a requirement. Like, I'll be in a technical refinement session at the start of a
Mm,
sprint, and I'll have a story written. I'll have a story there with a set of acceptance criteria, and you can already sort of picture it in your head how you're going to structure that.
mhm.
Um, which doesn't lend itself to some people, it does
Yeah.
to others. But not anybody had heard of OutSystems, particularly in my
Yeah.
uni course.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about it. I'll talk about it now to a couple of my mates, whatever, and they don't
Yeah.
really, they haven't got that. They haven't got that awareness as to what low code is,
Yeah. Sure.
which is why I think teaching it at uni would be a really
Yeah.
good idea. Even
Yeah.
if it was an elective course, you didn't have to do it.
Mm,
It would be, oh, this is a new technology. We see this industry growing exponentially, which from what I can tell
mm.
over the last 10 years, it has and
Yes.
continues to.
Yeah.
Then that would be, if a university decided, yes, we're going to do that as an elective, you can give people an alternative mindset from
Yeah.
at an educational level,
Yeah. Yeah.
as
Sure.
opposed to relying on a place that you work,
Yeah. To implement it.
evaluating,
Yeah.
going through
Yeah.
tender, implementing, spending the money, blah blah
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah.
I think it'd be really cool to work, if a university worked directly with OutSystems on a sort of like a partnership program
Yeah.
with,
Yeah.
to say, oh, we've got educational servers available to us. You can connect to these environments and
Mm.
genuinely do
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And OutSystems, from their learning perspective, their courses, boot camps, guided paths, certifications,
Yeah.
everything are so great, and they're
Yeah.
really beneficial. If you picked that up even earlier on, you
Yeah.
could put people onto guided pathways on degree apprenticeships to say, you are going to do this degree apprenticeship, choose this elective of doing low code, and
Mm.
then you can
Yeah.
secure
Yeah.
yourself into a position in the UK as a low code
Yeah.
developer, which is, from what I can tell, a bit of a sought after market.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely very sought after. I think we find, at the moment we're in a situation where there's too many customers and not enough developers around.
Yeah.
And I think like what you said, a good thing that from what you're suggesting is what we have found as well is, like you said, where it's the company going to tender and implementing it, what that will result in is, if a developer's done 3-4 years in traditional code at university, then he might join that company as a Java.NET developer. When they kind of do the announcement, okay, we're switching to low code, some will be kind of on board to learn and have a go, where some will be open to work and try to move on.
Yeah.
And because they don't know, and what they don't know is kind of daunting, isn't it? It's
scary
like,
to you.
Yeah,
exactly.
I've kind of invested all my studies in this. I started a career in this. Now I'm starting from scratch again.
Yeah, from someone else's strategic decision.
Exactly. Yeah. And how's that going to work out for me long term? And I think one thing that's quite good with OutSystems and just even low code, like you mentioned the other platforms as well, which most people know of, I think now, even, I think when you started working with 2018, to be fair, that's when we founded iTrack. And OutSystems really wasn't that well known in the UK, and 4 or 5 years down, it is, even us monitoring jobs on LinkedIn and things like that, compared to back then to now.
I mean, I get what, probably 3 messages a week from separate people.
I could imagine.
I get maybe 1 a week from a startup, and then a couple a week from other places. And most of them, they tick the boxes, hybrid working, things like that. But I think it's really beneficial, particularly in low code, is to stay in a position that you're in for at least a couple of years. Get yourself really proficient with different sectors. Like I'm really enjoying it, because I've moved from the motor sector, which from a personal private life perspective, I'm really into my cars and building cars and stuff like that, which is great. So that's why I chose the motor sector in the first place. But they're very waterfall in their approach to IT. Now, translating that into a lean, agile development methodology, particularly with a small team, was really tough. So to move from that into the financial sector,
Yeah.
And I mean, everybody says, oh, the financial sector is the place you want to be.
Yeah.
And it has a point. I mean, it may not
Yeah.
necessarily be as glitzy and glamoury as the motor industry, which is
Yeah. Yeah.
great,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which is fun. But what the financial sector allows you to do is enforce, an understanding of, realistically, the world relies around the financial
Yeah.
sector.
Yeah.
So
Of course. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
can develop products in low
Mm.
code surrounded by the financial sector, it's going to be a really good opportunity if you move on and fancy doing somewhere else,
Mm.
which, I don't know, let's say you wanted to go and work for a travel insurance company or
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that and moved
Yeah.
into the insurance sector. It's a much
Mm.
smaller leap to go from something like the financial into
Yeah.
insurance than it would have been to go from motor into something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
from a strategic career perspective, I
Mm.
guess being in the financial sector is a
Mm.
benefit, particularly in, a sought after development position.
Yeah. Sure.
It,
And
yeah,
since you have joined in February, how was that kind of transition for you after being, obviously, like you said, you weren't sure, and it's always, I think, people your age, when they've been at one place for a while, doing that first job change is always a bit, should I do it? Should I not? There's a bit of hesitance. How's that transition been for you?
I think initially, because I had a 3-month notice period at my old place,
Mm.
we signed
Mm.
contracts in the November, and I didn't leave until the end of
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
February.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I didn't, most people will finish a job and then have a week's gap and then start at the
yeah,
next one.
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't do that. I finished on the
yeah.
Friday and started on the
On
Monday.
Monday,
Yeah,
yeah.
because
You
I was
made them
like,
wait long enough.
yeah, I just want to keep that ball
Yeah,
rolling. And
yeah.
ironically, I went in on my first day and started on a project. So I was doing
Mm.
an authentication application
Mm.
for single sign-on, which is the project that I had done and owned, one of the major projects that I'd introduced and owned at my old place. So it was sort of
Oh,
a
wow.
transitional period,
Yeah,
and I was able to
yeah,
take things I learned from there, put it straight into a new application. I'd already within my first day found, oh, that's a shame. I found out a much better
yeah,
way of doing something here. Can I just go back and do it there for 2 weeks? Go
yeah,
fix
yeah,
that, and then I'll come back again.
yeah.
But no, it's been a really good transition. I mean, since February to May, I was just picking up other people's work and doing
Mm.
bug fixes and stuff like that,
Mm.
which is okay because it gave me a broader understanding as to
Yeah, sure.
what the products are available at the company. But now I've been on my own project since May. We've got
Mm.
a specific development team. We're using architecture dashboard. We made a strategic decision as the developers tech leads with our scrum master to say,
Mm.
a lot of the issues that we're currently facing is massive technical debt in the other projects.
Yeah.
And we're having to do lots and lots of projects, spend lots of money and invest lots of time to reduce that technical debt, improve the architecture, speed up development, speed up deployment times, etc., etc., etc.
Mm.
We want to do this from the start. So we were able to convince the business and our business sponsors,
Yeah.
business analysts, scrum master, everybody from top to bottom, that we want to architect this application from an OutSystems perspective perfectly. So we have no architecture violations in discovery. We have, I think, 3 active ones at the moment in architecture dashboard, which we monitor every day, every developer and the tech lead. So we've been investing the time from the get-go to do that, which one keeps our deployment times down a lot. We spend very little time doing technical debt analysis or anything like that, because it's just an ongoing part. And we've had to do a lot of refactoring within the project that we're doing for new requirements. And instead of it taking 2 weeks, an entire sprint, an entire developer's worth of time for an entire sprint, plus all of the testing that goes on top of it to do this refactoring, it's taken maybe 4, 5, 6 hours to essentially refactor half of the database. And it's not a massive project at the minute, but it will be. So doing that now and getting ourselves so used to it has just been like a breath of fresh air. Because you don't realize until you do it, but it's just, there's a reason OutSystems they don't enforce it, but there's a reason OutSystems recommends these working practices and use these tools, because it does make development easier. Breaking things down, understanding what concepts are where. I think the next step is to try and get the business analysts on board with breaking down and understanding concept driven architecture design, and therefore they can write their stories around those understanding of that concept, which It's something I'd like to do, but we're so in the midst of the project now. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
we're
yeah.
4.5 months into the project, and it's going
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
And I think we're probably going to be on it. I think the initial go live date is supposed to be September next year, but I
Okay.
think we'll probably be on it for easily
Yeah.
another year and a half.
Wow.
So I've
Yeah.
got meat and potatoes to get
Yeah,
myself
yeah, good, good.
to keep myself busy. I'm not hunting for work or anything like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that goes well with my next question. What I was going to ask for someone who's kind of, you know, 4 or 5 years without systems. Obviously, in that time, there's been certain features that have come out. You know,
Mhm.
what features? What do you think are some of the kind of key features that our systems have released that make life easier for a developer?
I think from a wider perspective, from a more
Mm,
holistic perspective, reactive is the best thing they could have possibly done. It's
yeah,
fabulous. When you go back and support a traditional development application, you think, oh bloody hell,
yeah,
don't
yeah,
want to
yeah,
be doing this.
yeah.
It is fab for that. But there's a one really minor, nuanced little one that they introduced. I think it was end of last year. And it's basically when you're iterating over a list or something like that, instead of having to force yourself into an index, when you run a client action on a list, let's say you wanted to open a pop-up from a list. So you click open, you click a call to action and it'll bring a pop-up. You don't have to force the row number into that list. It will just understand it now. And that has been something that's been absolutely integral to what we've been
Yeah,
developing in our project. And it's such a minor little nuanced thing, but it saves so much time in development,
yeah,
cuts down on code complexity, commenting doesn't have to be as severe. So that's been really good. We've now upgraded into the newest OutSystems 11 version,
yeah,
which now gives us reactive emails. So we're now going to
yeah.
start testing that, which has been great. I'm just trying to think what else really. I think if there was one thing that I'd like them to improve, it's making input valid. So let's say you've got an address block, for example,
Yeah.
in a public web block that you want to use across the application. You can run the built-in default form validations across that. But we have a lot of stuff where you need custom validations. Now, if you have an input, let's say an address line one or a postcode in a block that you've used on a screen, you don't have the availability to force that input to be invalid.
Yeah.
If they made public web blocks with input variables, if you make the validation states of those inputs publicly available to the blocks or to the screens that are using them, you would save massive amounts of time. And there's no reason why they wouldn't. I can't see any technical reason why they can't do it, because if you run normal built-in validations across a block, then it runs. And we've probably spent 2-3 weeks within our
Wow,
project
wow, okay. Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
overcome that problem, and the result that we've had to do is JavaScript,
Okay.
which is not really what we wanted to do.
Mm.
We try and avoid it, but if they were able to figure that out, I think that would be so good. And they're so minor nuanced things. And I've only just adopted the new version of Service Studio. I was a
Okay.
later I
Yeah, yeah.
did the beta. In the beta version that I was on, you couldn't do Control Enter to close an expression window, and because I do that about 150 times a day, I was like, well, I can't use this, so I
Yeah.
deleted it and I waited until they fixed it later on, and then I started using it.
Yeah.
So I'm
Wow.
bit of a late adopter. I don't even use dark mode, which I use for everything else. I don't use dark
Yeah.
mode in Service Studio because it doesn't look right, because you've got this
Yeah.
big white screen that you've got that
Yeah.
you're developing on, and it gives me a headache, so I can't use that. But I know of a lot of the other people
Yeah.
in my company who have been using it.
I
So
like it. Yeah. Okay. And
yeah.
have you ever kind of because you're quite heavily invested in low code,
Mhm.
have you ever kind of dipped your fingers into the other platforms, thought, let me have a look, see kind of what it's like?
No, to be honest with
Okay.
you, no. To be
Yeah.
honest with you, I
Yeah.
haven't. I don't know. I don't know if I'm putting all my eggs in one basket without a system, which potentially is a risk. But if it all goes Pete Tong, I'll just go and become an architect.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll go do architecture.
Yeah.
Do you know what it is? I've seen the best.
Mm.
I kind of
Yeah,
can't be
yeah,
bothered with the
yeah,
rest. It's
yeah,
which is a really corny thing to say, but
yeah,
I've lent myself, and it's not about being open minded into other things, because if I absolutely adored a company that I was working at and they decided to make a strategic move elsewhere, I wouldn't necessarily be that person that just gets up and leaves and goes back to what I'm doing, because there's going to come a time where that technology does get redundified. It's an inherent part of technology. You'd have gone to, even if you'd have gone 10, 15 years ago and said, .NET is going to be redundified by MVC and these low code platforms, you'd have gone, no chance. ASP was the thing. So I don't, and even back in the 80s, AS400 was all the rage. You wouldn't have thought of anything else. But technology catches up, technology takes over. I think the biggest difference that I've found with OutSystems is that because they are an iterative platform, they found the gap in 2018, 2017 and said, traditional web is no longer what we need to be doing because it's based on ASP.NET. We need to move to MVC. So they did it. They've continued to iterate on what they've been working on. And because they give you the freedom that you need to meet, like I've probably had maybe 4 scenarios where I've never met, when I've not physically been able to meet a requirement in OutSystems, even expanding out. And I try and work off the basis now. If the requirement cannot be achieved by what OutSystems can do as a platform, then the requirement is unrealistic. That may sound like a really silly thing to say because the business are asking for something. But if you then take that story or take that requirement back to the drawing board and think, is there a more effective way of doing this? Then oftentimes we have found, yes, there is, and we end up with a better product at the end of it. I think probably the big difference that I've found comparing sort of how I develop as a low-code developer, I don't consider myself a developer that's translated to low-code. I am a low-code developer. Try not to compare too much, but when I look at other people who I've seen in practice who have done traditional development to myself, is that I trust the platform. I trust that what the platform is providing me and what the platform is doing is expected behavior. And if it isn't working as expected, it's something that I've done wrong as a developer and I need to go back and figure it out, or the requirement is not in a position where it needs to be. And whereas I think there's, especially in early adoption or with traditional developers, I think there's a lack of trust in the platform because it's abstracted and they don't know what's going on underneath. They try and figure out what's going on underneath. And then if something's going wrong, the immediate blame is, well, I wish OutSystems would do this. And I've seen it so many times, and it's not so much negative. It's sort of expected. I try and work off the basis. I try not to look at it like that as much as humanly possible. And there's only a couple of little things that OutSystems doesn't do, such as public input variable validations. But that's just like a feature. It's not a fundamental. This platform is doing this incorrectly. Why won't it do what I want it to do? It's what I'm asking it to do isn't correct.
I think you've definitely got your eggs in the right basket.
I hope so.
I think so. So no, definitely. And one thing we like to kind of ask all our guests, the question that we ask everyone is kind of about, not sure how many you would come across, but kind of what would be your kind of message to people who kind of hate on low code and would just not consider it?
I think don't be, if it's, I understand it's scary, but if something wasn't scary, it isn't worth doing. Like moving a job, I was terrified moving a job, and if it wasn't scary going into that interview or doing that thing, then it isn't worth doing. But and I know it's probably, you hear it so much, just give it a go, but I think it's try and put yourself in the mindset of what OutSystems is trying to achieve. They're not trying to replace traditional code. They're trying to find themselves a more efficient way of doing what traditional, there's things that API, development and things like that. OutSystems is good for it, but you have middleware platforms that are better for it. MuleSoft is a fantastically powerful middleware platform. OutSystems can do a lot of what MuleSoft can do, but there's SAP, as much as I don't like it, is a fantastic CRM tool. Salesforce is a fantastic CRM tool. OutSystems can do it, but you have to develop it. It's it's not trying to fit every box. It's trying to enhance and speed up web development.
Yeah.
That is its fundamental purpose. It does all the other stuff really well, but that is what it's trying to do. So yeah, if it wasn't scary, it wouldn't be worth doing. Don't hate on it until you do try it. And it's not just a case of, oh, I'm going to do the boot camp and see if I like how if if Service Studio is a better program than Visual Studio. Irrelevant. It's does the platform save you time once you're skilled up on it? If the answer is yes, then it's served its purpose. It's done what it was intended. It's done what it was intended to do.
No, good answer. And just as a kind of final question, you're a young lad, you've been doing it for about 5 years. What's your kind of aspirations for the future with OutSystems?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when I was moving from where I was to where I am now, I had a gap in the middle where I didn't leave, but I had an interview in the middle where I'd applied as, or I sort of fell into an interview as an architect, as a pre-sales architect at OutSystems. And I probably I did the first interview. I was going into the second interview the next day, and I spoke to the person who I was interviewing with, who I'd worked with in the past on other projects, who we were very closely aware of each other. And I said, look, I can't do an architecture role because I love building things. It doesn't matter whether I'm on the driveway building a car in the evening, or if I'm building an application in OutSystems. If I'm building something, then I'm satisfied. So I want to stay as a developer for as long as humanly possible until I can't do it anymore.
Fair enough,
and that may be naive, and I may regret that decision, and I may change my decision in 5 years. I'm fed up of bug fixing. I want to look at a more strategic position, but I get satisfaction anywhere in my life out of building something, making something, getting a requirement and seeing that through to fruition, as opposed to designing it and telling someone how to develop it and complaining when they don't do it how you wanted it. It's so I'd like to see I don't know what the generals, I think we had a discussion about it before, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's about 4.5 to 5 years to be considered an advanced or a senior developer within the OutSystems scape. So I'm approaching that. So I'd like to be in a position on a pathway where I am at the place I'm at now to get to a senior developer position within the next year or so. I think that would be really great, because that sort of solidifies that the work that I've been doing has paid off. My age doesn't really matter in that regard. I've already done 2 certifications this year. I've done the architecture specialist and the mobile app specialist. I've got so next one will probably be security, and then I'll do the web front end one, and then I'll have all of the certifications required that are specializations in reactive and mobile dev, which I think sort of says, I've done the job for X amount of time. I've got the certifications to prove that I can do do the job. So that would be great. And then I don't know, just sort of keep going. I want to stay as a developer for as long as possible, and I think there's a lot of tech lead roles that you can still develop, but be a tech lead as well, if that was something I'd want to move into. But stay as a developer, but just sort of go to that advanced level.
Of course.
I think tech. No, go ahead.
No, you obviously saying you want to stay a developer as long as possible. I think I think there'll be no problem with you going senior. Then a lot of tech leads do still develop, so that's natural. I think that's something that you may find yourself in a couple of years.
Yeah, I hope so. I think technically I'm there, and I don't really particularly care about the labels or anything like that. It'd just be nice to be able to say, I've got the certifications to prove it. I've done the work. I'm at this level now, and I can continue building on top of that, because I don't want to stagnate, because I know it can be difficult as a developer to progress once you hit a certain level. But I want to continue to improve my learning to make sure that I'm staying on top of not just what's new, what's coming, but getting down to a more efficient level of detail of where I'm at and what I'm developing now, because you're always learning with code. It doesn't matter what you're doing, you're always learning. So just keeping that going instead of getting yourself into a rut of, well, this is how I used to do it. Oh, there's a better way of doing it, but I like how I did it before.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
no, great. Well, yeah, that's a good note to end on. Thanks for taking the time. I think it
Thanks
was
for
really
inviting me.
good
No,
to.
it's
I
great.
think it's kind of good to hear your career because it's very different to it. You're a very unique guest because we've not had someone
Thanks.
who's done a degree apprenticeship before. We've either got people who have come from 5, 6, 10 years in .NET or Java or whatever, or people who've done university and traditional and then either kind of just applying for jobs fell into it,
Yeah.
or they've kind of just joined the company that have adapted low code. So it's definitely I think unique, and I think listening to your story, I don't know why a lot of people don't do it, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's just from knowledge, not having
Yeah,
the awareness
yeah,
that is an option.
yeah. I think it's definitely a good option where even though you said you had to grind a bit more than others, in the long term it works out.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
think a lot better. Yeah. So no, thanks for taking the time. I think it'll be good to talk again in the future. See how you've
Absolutely.
developed, where you've got to. And you take care. And it was nice talking to you.
I appreciate it. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Low Code Podcast, hosted by iTrack Recruitment, global leader in low code recruitment. Be sure to subscribe and see you next time.